that's just a tiny. That's what I usually choose, is like a tiny amount like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Not much at all. Like really, it's like one puff.
It's like a fingernail.
It's a mini dose.
Yeah.
It's like minimalism. Instead of maximizing, to minimize. Are we happening?
Yeah.
We are happening.
Anytime. Do you want to?
To me, the whole cannabis issue is a non-issue. It's just an earth medicine, like garlic or ashwagandha powder, and or anything that grows on the planet, of mushrooms or cinnamon bark of trees. It's just the natural apothecary of life. That it really should be a free choice of everybody who's here, all of us who are born to this planet. Really, it's not a new argument. It's an old consensus, awareness, really, and it really, this whole idea of dispensaries now is it's time to just, it's really good to have information and be aware, but we each get our choice. This is ideally at best, as long as we're not bothering anyone else. And certainly silliness can be a factor with cannabis smoking, and that really does disturb some people, but it's not dangerous. It's not very, there's some degrees of psychosis that can happen, I suppose, but that's in the spectrum of experience. It's generally much more positive than negative, as we all know. Most people have come to know that we've been lied to at so many levels by the dominant culture as we've grown up in Western world, and it's now time to, and it's so great the internet is making, as well as so much misinformation there, but at least one can sort out the many choices of information available, and do one's own testing is the best. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to introduce yourself? And
yes.
What's your life philosophy, maybe in a few short sentences, and what you're here for?
Good idea. I'm Michael Poole. I live in Tofino. We have a couple of expressions. There's I think Poole's Land is a Facebook internet forum, and we've got WQ pooleslandtofino.wordpress.com, and there's a few videos there. And yeah, I basically have tied my reality to the 20 acres. It was 20 acres, now 17 and a half in Tofino, and just try doing some experimenting with socioeconomic, political thought and actions to reconsider just what might work and what is fair in a community of people, and so it's been said that this is somewhat of an anarchy. I call it soft anarchy, that really just trying things that really don't affect the outside world, and except for maybe the loud parties, which we decided to have no more loud parties at the property, and not late and not loud, because the neighbors have kids, and I really like my neighbors and don't want to bother them. But certainly one of the biggest concerns in a municipality is sewage, and to me, long ago I realized that at great expense we're throwing away valuable resource, and how much easier it is to compost. Composting is making earth, and it's feeding the planet rather than poisoning and sending out of balance, causing dead zones at sewage outfalls in the ocean, and just flushing anything we wanted to disappear out of sight and down through the pipes. I call it the plumbing mafia. All these pipes and pumps and waste, really, at great expense. More piping, more and then putting both chlorine into the water, drinking water, and fluorine perhaps, and then whatever in terms of secondary sewage treatment, rather than, most places do just pump directly into the ocean, and there's a dead zone at the outfall, and of course we're adding acidifying the ocean, which is a real problem, and all kinds of poisonous chemicals that really are unbalancing the ocean chemistry. It's really time to take responsibility, and so I've decided to keep our compost on the property and not use the sewage system. I hooked it up; it's all in place and got okayed by the municipal government. But then I decided to shut it down and not use that system, and we found some designs on the internet, and built some cement containers that that do compost in due time. But I've found that it's just as easy to just shovel out these containers occasionally and mix with wood chips where I'm building gardens, and it's a good thing. And I'm keeping all that energy on the property, and we're responsible for that. Mainly for growing trees, and to be put into the forest, the food forest that we'll be planting on these piles of wood chips as they turn into earth, which it truly accelerates the breakdown of the wood chips, which are mostly carbon, and so with the nitrogen especially from urine, it's 1 cup of urine satisfies or meets the chemical balance requirements of 30 to 40 cups of carbon, which is the wood chips. So 1 cup of pee to 30, 40 cups of wood chips is a really good ratio for making quality earth. And of course, urine is non-pathogenic. There's nothing pathogenic in urine. It comes out of our bodies totally sterile in that sense, except for perhaps, and even the liver has cleaned out all the problems.
Are you talking about urine therapy, like the
Yes.
fact that it has
I have
white blood cells in there, and like it helps with like disinfecting wounds, and
yes.
you can use it topically as well for skin
Yes.
conditions. And
Yes.
you can also recycle it and drink it again. And
Yeah.
if you take the first stream of pee in the morning, it has a little bit of that melatonin from the night.
Right on.
And then you can have like that little meditative effect. I think there's a yoga practice about it.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that one. They usually say the middle of the flow from the middle of the day, but it makes sense. The first flow
Mm-hmm.
would have the melatonin factor
Mm-hmm.
in it. Interesting.
Yeah. Do you want to smoke up a bit, or?
Yeah, I'll have a puff.
We're like in the middle of the thing, but I mean, I always just do like a free-flowing style interview, and then I like cut little scenes, right, and then like edit all that, so it's kind of like doesn't really matter if you have like a pure like speech all at once. Like I'll just make it into it's all good. Thank you.
That's it, and it can all be edited. You're into that, so that's great. I'm a real minimalist. That was a tiny little piece that was in there, and that'll be plenty. I
We all
usually
have,
take
like,
in
that one.
lots of air as well. I think the main problem is the heat of burning and smoking. Yeah, that was a good one. That's plenty.
That's a rock pipe. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that bowl being soapstone, it cools it a little bit, but there's such an airflow that I'll allow much more air in as I'm taking a puff. That's where the water pipes are so valuable. That just there's no hot air searing literally the lungs.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just the carbon from the burning of the material.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It's the vaporizing is far superior, but I'm taking just so little that I feel that it's still okay to take a little bit of smoke, usually in the evenings, but after getting things done. But sometimes just when the work is so menial, digging and sorting roots and rocks out, a puff really does help.
Yeah.
To just, and I find it really energizing. I'm much more likely to give a massage or start doing some kind of dance or other. That's the shoulder bend, and yeah, it's as we all know, I don't really have any pain, so I don't really take it for pain, but to be energized and just to be, I feel it helps me to become my fuller self and to get up and do something and not be idle, and be idle no more, as they say, and not be so idle, just watching, sitting back and watching TV or someone else do something, or the weather channel, whatever. And it's not just idle energy, which is the main thing to become active in our own lives, but there's so much idle capital, trees that have been cut down and money that's been made, and it's just sitting, doing nothing. It's all needs to be activated, especially at this point in history. We may only have 5 to 10 years left, if that, depending on nuclear warfare is always the possibility of wiping out this little anthill of humans on Earth. And so, and of course we are all going to die eventually. So the question is, how do we live? And to keep it really positive is so basic. And to live as well as we can every day, and be as cooperative and communicative with as many people as possible in a one-to-one way, in a present way. Of course, here we are online, and that works too, and that's the best part, that we all have the information, so much information now, and we're at such a crucial edge that we each have to decide what we're doing in our own lives every day to go forward, and yet we're also addicted to oil, and just driving is such a pleasure and so easy compared to taking care of horses, which really requires a lot of energy as well, and it's a workout. It's a really tough call on how this is going to go. It seems we're due for a dieback in any case, and especially with regard to how many people are here and how much energy and the mess we're making really is huge, and so it's time to, well, and it has been going on. We've fairly well documented all the things we're doing wrong, including pumping sewage into the ocean. But E. coli really isn't that dangerous when you look at how many people are dying from that particular cause of death compared to, well, homicide from guns certainly is way higher, and the cancer, I think, is right up there with heart disease now. I wonder what the actual numbers are at this point. And that's really our personal duty, is to make these studies and make our choices, finally.
Would you say there's like a movement of like going back to the roots of how we used to do things, like in a more natural way, and like the evolution of that in like the last, like, let's say like 5-10 years compared to like how in the last 20 years, let's say, it's just kind of been like accumulating and bringing us to this point where almost like a point of no return, where there's climactic changes or changes going on with like even like our society and politics, let's say, in general, and how we've come to this point and people are realizing that it's not too late to start wanting to have a change, but it's still our responsibility to take action.
Totally.
And I know that there's been a lot of attention brought up to you and your land, and like professional videos done and showing it under like almost like a young perspective, right? And seeing how attractive that is to be wanting to live in a community and actually work for your brother and your sister and kind of like build together instead of building for your own. And that if we have any chance of trying to making it out of our situation is through that, instead of in a selfish way in that sense.
Yes, indeed. Selfishness is encouraged, has been encouraged by the corporate culture, really, of the consumerism, that we don't need to work together, haven't needed to work together in the last 10, 20, 50, 100 years, since productivity, or rather mass production and mass marketing, basically use of machines to do the work and feed us industrial sludge mostly. Since the 60s, really, I think it comes down to, there's a lot of factors, and it's hard to know. There was even when the ghost dancers said our spirits will be reborn in 7 generations, and that the hippies, so-called hippies, were perhaps of the 60s, and the communes that started there, and the attempt to go back to the land and live the 50-mile or 100-mile diet, 50-kilometer everything, that in that area with all the different groups and skills that exist, they could make horse harness and raise deer and have venison and farm everything, have all the food they need and whatever level of technology. And certainly horses have been coming back. We have Welsh mountain ponies that in one friendship network that are the greatest little horses, really fun to work with, and they can actually pull more pound for pound than a Morgan or a great big Clydesdale. And even the Canadian horse, another favorite, it can outpull pound for pound the Canadian, developed in Quebec, raised and evolved rather in Quebec through love and intercross raising. And that is a huge skill, and it takes a lot of work. Luckily we do have the best technologies the whole energy requirement is now so much better that we don't have to, we can collect wind, water, and Tesla energies, earth energies, geothermal energy, with all kinds of brilliant devices. So it gives us more time to do what our great-great-grandparents could do, and which is communicate and evolve various forms of everything we do, and that each region reflects the thinking of those people, that we're all, again, become more unique, even with our amazing gadgets.